Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers. We are finally in the first game week of the season. Saints hosting the Carolina Panthers in the Superdome Sunday, September 8th at 12 o'clock. However, a lot has happened in the past week. The Saints finalized their initial 53-man roster on Tuesday, then the practice squad on Wednesday. There has been some movement since then as this team continues to evolve as players across the league are moved. The Saints, in turn, are going to look at those players and decide if they fill a need or they can help the team. Things will start to settle down as week one really gets underway through the first couple weeks of the season. But for a breakdown of where things stand now as we head into the first week of the season, I went to three Saints legends: former running back Deuce McAllister, linebacker Scott Shanle, and kicker John Carney, for their insight on the offense, defense, and special teams. Let's start things off with our Saints radio analyst, Deuce McAllister, on the offense.
Deuce, thanks for joining me. It is great to talk to you again. How excited are you for the regular season to get underway?
I'm excited. I think the opportunity for those young men to be able to go out and show, obviously you talk about the three preseason games, but you talk about training camp and the offseason work as well, OTAs. And so for them, it's another opportunity to be able to go out and place another team, actually.
You were there for all of training camp, but for the people that weren't, the offense has not exactly been shown in these preseason games. So what does it look like? What can we expect?
You may not have shown a bunch of layers of it, but I think the basis of the offense has been seen. And I think, for a lot of people, they will go back and look at, what you've done in San Francisco and the basis of the offense. And so it's really, for me, it's about execution. You can go out and have the best system in the world, but if you don't execute, it doesn't really matter. And so if you can put players in position to be able to have success and win, that's what it's about. And so they will have to go out there and execute at a high level. You start with the first opponent being Carolina, and I think that's where the focus has to be. You don't want to put yourselves in a position where you start in the hole as far as the first game, and then with it being a division game, that makes, the importance even more.
A lot of stress emphasis has been put on establishing that run game. And through the preseason, there was 87 rush attempts by the Saints, 96 passing attempts. So the number is a lot closer than they were last season. You have Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller unable to participate for at least a few weeks, and then Jamal Williams and Jordan Mims. How important is it going to be for that group to get things going?
I think it'll be critical for that group. I mean, they have to be able to run the football. You may, I don't know if there's a number that they want to touch each week as far as total attempts and then total rushing yards, but they have to be effective running the football. From a system standpoint, it's built off of running the football, using play action, moving the pocket, bootlegs, and different things of that nature. And so if defenses don't feel that you can run the football, then it makes it just so much more difficult for you. And then how you're built, I think that you're built to be able to run it. And it'll be intriguing. Is the number 35 rushing attempts? Is it 30 rushing attempts? It'll be intriguing to see how they try to utilize those guys as far as the running backs are concerned. And, from an offensive lineman standpoint, no offensive lineman wants to sit and take pass drops 40 times a game. If that's what it calls for, you'll do it. But nobody wants to go week in and week out having to expect that, just pure drop back pass. They're going to have to do it at some point, but hopefully not to that amount.
Speaking of that offensive line, it's been a question mark all training camp. How do you feel like Trevor Penning has come along in solidifying that right tackle position? And then looks like Lucas Patrick getting that left guard spot.
They've been a work in progress. I mean, I think every day the goal is to be able to get a little bit better. With Lucas, he's a veteran. He's been there, done that. It's just about taking advantage of the opportunity. Salivary had been in that spot. Injury kind of knocked him out midway through camp and hadn't been able to recover. And Lucas just took advantage of the opportunity to be able to go out there. And when you talk about Trevor Penning, for me, It's about the fundamentals, just trusting his fundamentals and, not allowing a guy that has more speed than me, let that speed me up. I still know that I have to be able to go out and, just do the fundamental things right. You're too big, you're too strong. And so from that standpoint, you can't be afraid that, hey, this guy's going to beat me outside. This guy's going to inside me move. If I trust what I'm doing from, my training, my teaching, my technique, continue to hone in on that. And it's just going out and perfecting it. And so you've seen him be a dominant blocker at times. And then you've seen him obviously lose some reps that he should not lose. And I think it's just playing with some confidence and playing fast, but doing it in a fundamental way.
How does this offense maybe take some of the pressure off of the offensive line?
Well, I think it's by being able to run the football. I think it's by moving the pocket a little bit. And so those guys don't have to just straight pass block when you talk about drop back passing, et cetera. That's taking pressure off of them. And then, there's some certain things that they can do from a formation-wise standpoint to be able to help some of those tackles and even some of the guards. And then, just being able to, with alignment, the one thing that it does do, though, when you start to have to rely on situations like that from a formation standpoint, you take different guys out of routes. And now from a defensive standpoint, I can go 3-over-2, or I can go 2-over-1 and, take some players away. And it just makes it a lot harder where now guys have to win on the outside.
We know that Chris Olave is going to be wide receiver 1, Rashid Shaheed getting back on the field here this week. What are you expecting from that duo?
Well, they've got to be an explosive duo. I mean, I think for them, it has to be able to, they have to be able to produce yak yardage. And so yards after the catch is going to be critical for this offense. And those two obviously have the talent to be able to do so. And, it'll be interesting and intriguing to see how teams play them. Will Chris get the safety rolled over top? Will teams respect Rashid's speed? Will he have underneath opportunities? Those are all things that'll come into play. And I think it'll be important for them. We talked about the run game. Can they throw their body in there without injury? And I think that's going to be an intriguing part. How do the Saints use those guys as far as blockers? And then how do they try to, make sure that they're safe and not just beat up from having to block linebackers and or safeties?
How important is it going to be to develop that depth? Because it seems like it's A.T. Perry, Cedric Wilson, and then this outlier with Mason Tipton who gets signed. And also, I need to know how surprised you were by that.
Not surprised by it. I mean, I think, if you just looked and saw what he was able to do, the speed is what really intrigues you the most, because he's a similar build to you, like you talked about Rashid and Chris. And so from that standpoint, what he can do. Now, the question is, can it transfer to the games? And I think what's the most important part for him, didn't matter who he was lining up against, whether it was an undrafted free agent or a draft pick or veteran. He was going out and having success. And I think for him, it's just continuing to get healthy. And then can you build off of some of the success that you had in training camp? And from the depth development standpoint, all of those guys, particularly your first 4, they've caught passes in the NFL. And so I don't think that you would be saying, hey, I want you to go and do something that you haven't done before. It's maybe doing it a different way. The talent is there for those guys. It's just going out and just doing their individual job and not necessarily getting caught up in, hey, I'm number 2 or I'm number 3. I'm just a playmaker. I'm a football player. I go and make plays. That's how you have to approach it.
A couple other football players, playmakers, Taysom Hill obviously comes to mind, and then Juwan Johnson. Taysom got listed as a fullback, which I think is a new one for him. I don't think he's ever been listed on a roster by that. And then Juwan Johnson being added back into the mix. What do those two provide for this offense?
I think the opportunity for Juwan, if he's healthy, he's going to see a one-on-one matchup. I mean, and it's getting on the same page with Derek Carr, feeling the same things that he feels when a defense is doing certain things, whether that safety is rolling, whether I have a linebacker, knowing where to put the ball, knowing when I run this route, this is what I'm expecting, this is where the catch point will be, knowing that you're going to be there. I mean, in certain situations in this offense, somebody has to be hot, knowing that I'm the hot guy. So I have to adjust my route just a little bit, just so the quarterback and I are on the same page. And so little things like that. And for Taysom, to be lined up at fullback, I don't think it really means a lot. The biggest thing for me when I see Taysom out on the field, how our defense is countering. Is he getting a 4-3 base defense, or is he getting nickel defense? That'll determine, okay, Do I play Alvin a little bit more? Do I bring in another tailback? Now I technically have 3 backs in the game, but I can put two other tight ends in the game. And so how does a defense respond to that look? And who gets the one-on-one? When I send motion, when I do shift, how are they covering that? And that's, where the quarterback can exploit some of those matchups.
What kind of steps forward do you think Derek Carr is going to take in his second year with the players around him? Definitely a different system, but being able to go through and learn together and be comfortable with the playmakers that he is with.
Yeah, Derek was probably at the biggest disadvantage last year because 95% of the guys on the squad knew the system. He was the new guy trying to learn the system. Now, all of them learned a new system, and I think he'll feel a lot more comfortable because this system is predicated more so off the drop back pass. Off the play action and not just pure drop back pass game. And that was really Sean's system. When you talk about West Coast system, it was predicated more off of drop back pass, not play action. And so I think that he's going to do well. He's a lot more comfortable with obviously the players, knowing and understanding and having a feel for that West Coast system. He's been in something similar. So he should feel pretty comfortable, and, hopefully they can go out and put points on the board, and for this team, that's what it's going to be about. And then, can you sustain drives? Can you convert on third down? And how good can you be in the red zone?
Overall, how potent do you think this offense can be? How much more effective, how much more success can they have in the red zone and, getting 7 instead of having to settle for some field goals like we saw a lot last season?
Well, I think the talent is there. It's about execution. Until you go out there and do it and prove and show you can do it, it sounds good, but that's what it's going to come down to. Is can you go out and execute? Can guys step up and make plays when they have to be made? And, there will be pressure moments. Who can step up and make a play? And so I kind of need to see it. It looks good on paper, but I still need to see it.
I think everybody's in the same boat right now. We are ready to see it. We're ready for this season to be here, and it'll kick off pretty shortly against the Carolina Panthers. So Deuce, thank you so much for the insight.
No problem. Thank you.
Great stuff from Deuce. Now to Scott Shanle on the defense. Scott, great to talk to you on the New Orleans Saints podcast. How are you doing? Have you recovered from preseason? I know it wasn't as taxing on you as maybe some people.
Yeah, I'm like a lot of fans. I enjoy the preseason being shorter. Obviously, training camp for the players doesn't feel shorter, but having one less preseason game and actually building an anticipation for the regular season and getting that here in a hurry, it's good for fans.
It's funny. I was talking to some of the veteran players, starters that weren't playing in Sunday's game, and I was asking them, is it weird that you're not playing? You're just out here watching. And they said they love watching the young guys compete out there, but they are definitely ready for the regular season. And we had cuts this week, so we kind of know what the team is actually going to look like. Were there any surprises pertaining to the defensive side for you?
There really wasn't. There were a couple of names. I think Jonathan Abram played a lot of football for the Saints, especially at the later half of last year. And I think the battle became between Will Harris and Jonathan. And Will Harris has been a veteran in this league for a long time. He's played some good football. I think he had a better camp. But the great thing about the way they do practice squad now is, back when I played, it was really just rookies and first and second year players that were on practice squad. So now you can bring back a lot of really good veteran players. So I'm sure Jonathan's one of those guys that the Saints want to have in their locker room. It just becomes a numbers game. And, it's hard to fit 53 really talented players on a football roster. So that one kind of surprised me because you chose one veteran over another who played some good football for you at the end of the year. And then Peyton at cornerback, Rico, he had a great preseason game. That's the undrafted free agent game that everybody wants to have in their final preseason game. He was outstanding, and he proved he could play with the big boys, and he belonged in this league. So, and the Saints have a history of keeping guys. If you're an undrafted free agent, I think that's one of the things that guys like myself, former players, respect about the Saints organization is it's not about how you get there. It's about, can you help us win? And so another undrafted free agent makes a team. And defensively, I'll take the punter on defense too. I think a lot of people maybe were surprised about Lou being released because he was a starter. So anytime you see starters get released, I think people kind of open their eyes. But at the same time, the Saints were near the bottom in net punt last year. So I think it was an area of the team they were looking to upgrade.
Yeah, Hayball was slightly ahead of Headley as far as those net yards during preseason. You mentioned, undrafted players. The Saints took 4. They actually have 10 first-year players on the initial 53, which brings their overall average age down about half a year. So they're trending younger. It's something we talked about a lot last season towards the end of the year about needing to get a little bit younger as some of your other players, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, start to age out a little bit. Rico Payton, he is one of those young guys. You mentioned what you liked about him. What can he add as far as maybe just being a little bit younger, a little bit fresher, but then on the other side, how much development still needs to be there?
Yeah. Oh, sure. There's a ton of development. There's a lot about the game that he doesn't even know yet. But I think when you keep a guy around like him, it's about what you see him bringing potentially for depth. First of all, he's going to be a special teams player. That's going to be the first role because this is a tough team to break as far as getting on the field at cornerback. When you start listing Marshawn Lattimore, Lante Taylor, Debo, and then you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, those are four really good corners. So, but you can never have enough guys who can cover, and you can never have enough depth at that position. So I think it's a position where I wouldn't doubt if he gets on the field at some point this year because there's going to be injuries, and that's just part of the game. And to your point, you talked about the youth. I marked that down as well. The Saints are trending back towards the average of the league. At one time, it was not that way. The Saints were like over 30 years old. A ton of their starters were aging, and now you have 16 guys, 25 or younger, and only 8 guys, 30 or older. I think it's a great mix of veteran leadership because you do lose a step the older you get, but you also make up for that in your mental awareness of the game. And then that youth inflection brings athleticism, speed, excitement. So I think it's a good mix, and they're trending back towards the younger part of the league.
Speaking of linebackers, they opted to stay with Jalen Ford, maybe over Khaleke Hudson, who is a veteran in this league. Again, maybe looking towards a younger player, developing him, even though he missed a little bit of the preseason with a couple hamstring injuries. What do you think went into the decision? Somebody that did play very well at Texas.
Yeah, I think anytime it's hard to give up on a draft pick. It really is. You want to see your draft pick play before you say, okay, we made a mistake, or, he just needs time to develop. And Jalen didn't have enough time on the field. You're not going to give up on a draft pick. I think he has attributes and a tremendous future in this league, but you need to be patient with draft picks. You just don't get rid of them. Now, that being said, Hudson, on the other hand, he had a great preseason. I mean, the week I was out there, he was all over the field. He's a 3-down linebacker. He's a little undersized, but what he lacks in size, he makes up for in speed and athleticism. So there are a ton of these guys that we're talking about that got released. The Saints are going to pray that they clear waivers so that they can get back on practice squad and keep them a part of their organization. I think Hudson's one of those guys.
Sure. That linebacker room in general just seemed like it elevated as a whole. You start with Demario Davis, Pete Werner, then you add Willie Gay Jr., DeMarco Jackson, and then Anthony Orji had a great preseason. He's somebody that was on the practice squad last year, makes this 53. How good of a feeling is that for him and the work that he's put in to actually be on the actual roster?
Yeah, they rewarded him with his play in the preseason. He's another guy, when I was out there, he popped. It wasn't just because he was wearing 58. I mean, he's my favorite player on the team because he's wearing 58, but every day in practice, I was fortunate enough to sit in a linebacker meeting and I watch every play and see how they were getting coached. And every day you sat in that room, 58's making plays. And so he's another guy that every day it was just consistently being there every single day. And as an organization, as a coaching staff, can I count on this guy? What am I going to get every day Anthony Orji steps on the field? Every day he made plays, and he did what he was supposed to do. And you can win a lot of games with guys like that.
We talked a lot about the defensive line because of the addition of defensive end Chase Young and just the force that he was immediately returning from the injury. How much is he going to impact what the Saints are able to do up front?
I think Chase has an opportunity. It's a great opportunity for the Saints because I think it could be the signing of the offseason. And I think Chase on a 1-year deal, if he plays the way everybody expects the former number 2 overall pick in the draft to play, he's gonna strike it big in free agency. So it can be a win-win. The organization needs pass rush. They need to get after the quarterback, and Chase is obviously playing for the future of what he's going to do in this league. So that being said, just talking to Chase, I bumped him to the hotel, talked to him for a little bit. He's excited to be in New Orleans. He loves the family atmosphere. He loves the locker room. He loves the guys and the coaches in the city. And I just think it's a great fit. And that's why he chose the organization. He probably could have signed 1-year deals with half the league. And that's just, not many guys are going to choose to go play somewhere where Cam Jordan's going to be in the Ring of Honor as the all-time sack leader. And Granderson just got paid. He picked a place where he thought, they were going to utilize his skill set. And for Chase, it's about staying healthy. If Chase stays healthy, I think he can be a force on this defense. I think he can be one of those guys that defense coordinators say, okay, we can't leave this guy one-on-one with the tackle. And when you start dictating things like that to an offense and keeping tight ends in, it makes playing defense a lot easier.
With Chase Young being added, you mentioned Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan here, he's sliding inside, but you still have Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey that have made the team at that position. Isaiah seems like he's somebody that still needs to take a couple steps forward. Head coach Dennis Allen mentioned it. He might be a contributor on special teams, though. Is that where he really needs to solidify himself just to be able to get on the field?
I think so. I think Isaiah's in one of those positions where he was a fairly high draft pick. It's year two. People are looking for, the player progression. This goes back to Parcells and Peyton. Year one, you're just trying to figure it out. Year two, we need to see improvement. Like, you can show you can play in this league, and by year three, you need to be a starter. And that's just kind of the evolution of how organizations take players. So he's a little bit behind on that, but he has great size. He has a lot of the intangibles and the things you want in a defensive lineman. So sometimes I think as an organization, you don't ever want to give up on a guy too early. Your worst nightmare is letting go of a guy and he goes somewhere else and he ends up being this 10-year veteran player. Mm-hmm. And whether or not he can do that, I don't know. Only time will tell. But the pressure's on Isaiah to consistently, just like we talked about Hudson, consistently make plays every day to show that you belong. But in the meantime, there's nothing wrong with making plays on special teams because every play matters and you need all three phases in the game to win games.
Going back to the safety position, you have Tyrann Mathieu, and it does look like Will Harris now is going to be starting opposite him. What do you think he brings in that role?
I just think anytime you can get veteran presence, I mean, he's seen it. By the time you play 4, 5, 6 years in this league, there's not a whole lot that surprises you anymore. You've seen all the offensive schemes. You've gone against the players around the league that you're going to go against on Sunday because you just, especially in this division, he's probably played some of these teams, right? He's familiar with the tight ends he's going to cover or the wide receivers he's going to cover. So having a veteran presence back there, and I know going into this offseason, Jordan Howden started some games last year that he was a draft pick, but it's not to say Jordan couldn't do it. It's just that Will Harris has played a lot of football. Like I said about DeMario, and as you became an aging player in this league, sometimes you may lose a step every year, but you make up for it in mental. And like I said, Jonathan Abram played a lot of really good football at the end of last year, and I think the Saints locker room loved him, and still loves him. But it's a testament to Will Harris and the type of camp he had. I think he was just one of those sneakily quiet, great camps every single day that nobody was really talking about, and then Final 53 comes out, and here he is, your starting safety, and that's a testament to Will.
Yeah, Abram, at the end of last year, the last 2 games, he had 14 tackles and an interception. So after the injury to Marcus May, it was between him and Jordan Howden. And then now you have this third person that you signed in free agency that comes in, it takes that starting role. But Abram did start the year on practice squad, maybe where he ends up. I know that they do like him and would love to see him back in this room. When you look at the defense overall, we talked about how difficult some of these decisions were. How much better do you think this defense can be? Because they notoriously been one of the top defenses in the league, but really seems like Coach Allen, he's set a higher standard for them this season.
Yeah, I think, when you have the Saints offenses, with Drew and Colston and all those guys and Sproles and the Reggies, and they're scoring 35 or 40 points a game, you can get a little more aggressive on defense. You can bring the house. You can maybe go feast or famine. And I think at times last year, I think Dennis maybe felt like they were a little too conservative on defense because they weren't scoring the points on offense. So every play was like, we can't give up a touchdown. We got to be conservative. We can't bring the house. And so you saw less blitzing. I think the offense will be improved this year, which I think will help the defense. I think this defense has a chance to be dominant. I've told a lot of people just after seeing this defensive line, I think the Saints defensive line has a chance to be the best D-line group in the NFL. The linebacker unit the same way. If Pete stays healthy and DeMario stays healthy, those are in my opinion, I don't know if there's 2 better 3-down linebackers on the field at the same time at nickel, because defense now is really nickel defense. And then I just mentioned the corners. I mean, those are 4 quality corners all the way across. So it's a nickel and dime league. You can really get after the quarterback. So when you go at all 3 levels, you have players that a lot of people around the league would love to have. I think this defense expects to be dominant, and they have that type of ability to be dominant.
After training camp, we have this week before the regular season starts. You get a couple bonus practices and you get into your game week prep. As a former player, what was that time like emotionally? Going through cuts, you might not be somebody that's dealing with that aspect of it, but seeing other people get cut and then having to shift and really lock in for the season.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold. When you're a young player, the business of the NFL slaps you in the face. Guys you got to know all off season and through training camp, you really bond with, and now they're gone. Because just like I said, fitting 53 quality football players on a roster is hard to do. There are a lot of really good players in camp. So that's hard when you're a younger player. I think as you get older and you're established and like DeMario Davis knows he's starting. Pete Werner knows he's going to start. Training camp becomes a grind. You're like, okay, can we just get through this? Can I get through this healthy? Let's get to the games that really count. And so you become kind of a mentor to the younger guys, trying to help them find their way in the league. So it's kind of twofold based on whether you're young or old. But I know once that final preseason game ends, that meeting in the locker room, coach speaks to you, it's for real now. It's go time. There's everything we prepped for. everything we've heard all offseason about how we can't do this, or we're not going to finish this, or this and that. It's go time. So it's time to prove it. And so I think that gets exciting after that last preseason game.
Coach Dennis Allen told me last week that Demario Davis has elevated his leadership. He's always been somebody that's brought it, on the field. He's been there as a leader in the linebacker room, but he kind of said overall, he's coming up to DA's office. He's reporting back on the vibe in the locker room, how things are going, areas that might need to be addressed, how DA should address things. How beneficial do you think having that type of relationship is going to be for Coach Allen, and maybe how he manages this year as a head coach?
Well, it's huge. You expect a lot out of the captains, but that feedback from the way the guys are feeling in the locker room to upstairs to the coaching staff, and it puts everybody on the same page. We had that. Jonathan Vilma was our guy on defense who did that. Him and Sean had a relationship that anytime there was a concern on our side of the ball, we knew Vilma would take care of it. And Demario's that guy for this defense. I've said forever that Demario, he's the second greatest free agent acquisition in Saints history behind Drew Brees. And I think that type of play, since he's gotten there, every time people are like, well, Demario's getting older, he's got to fall off eventually, and he'll go out and have a 2-sack game and a 14-tackle game. That's just what he's done. And so now that he's bringing the veteran leadership and being that bond between the locker room and the coaching staff, like I said, being around that group and sitting in meetings and watching coach the young guys and being an extra coach in the room and like, hey, coach has already told you this. If you're not going to listen, you're not going to play in this league. And he just simplified it. And it's so true. It means more coming from veteran players like that. And so the fact that Demario is now kind of a coach on the field as well as the coach off the field with working with DA, I think it's beneficial for the team.
Well, it gets me excited. I can't wait for the season to start to see them actually go against another opponent, the Carolina Panthers, first game of the season, and see how things play out. I appreciate it. And I know you'll be there with us throughout the year. So look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
As Scott and I brought up, Jonathan Abrams, safety, was put on the practice squad along with Ugo Amadi and Miller Bradford, linebackers Khalid Hudson, Isaiah Stallbird, and then defensive end Nico Lelos and defensive tackle Kendall Vickers. Vickers was actually on that initial 53, but as I mentioned, things are still fluid. He was moved to the practice squad for the addition of another player. Okay, now to the kicking game. Here's John Carney. Thank you so much for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. It's great to see you again. It's been a little while. Saw you out on the West Coast. You're still there. I'm here back in New Orleans, but how are you?
We're doing well. Thank you, Erin. An exciting time of the football season as everybody's settling in on their 53.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I know for the second year in a row, the Saints had quite the battle in the specialist room between the kicker and punter. And it ends up being Blake Grupe, who does make that initial 53 as the kicker, and then Matthew Hayball as the punter. You spent some time with everyone there at camp a couple days, and you got to see them work. What did you like about the progress that Grupe's made from last year to this year?
Blake's more healthy this year. It's very typical for a rookie specialist to just battle fatigue, because when they come out of their last playing days in college, they go right into training for combines, for all-star games, for pro days. So they never really have a break, and that can be a lot of wear and tear on the body. And so we had some discussions about him making it through the season last year and feeling like I'm hitting a good ball, but I just feel like, a little worn out from this long year. It's a very long year for specialists. And so he feels healthy and strong, hitting a good ball, is excited about basically your sophomore year coming back with the Saints, and understanding the pro game and understanding the length of the season and how to prepare for that. So he's feeling really good and confident.
When you look at Charlie Smith, he clearly has the raw talent. He just doesn't necessarily have the consistency. He's very new to kicking an American football. Do you feel like that played a part in just the confidence that Coach Dennis Allen has in Blake Grupe because he's one more year behind him as a pro?
Well, and many years at the college and high school level as well. So that experience, you can't trade that experience. But Charlie is an amazing talent, and that's why the Saints wanted to take a look at him. And Charlie did some amazing things this offseason and preseason. So he continues to get better. I believe Charlie's future is in the NFL, whether it's coming back and continuing his progress with the Saints on the practice squad, or possibly being picked up and getting a look this week or within the next several weeks at other teams across the league. Really enjoyed working with him. Very coachable, picks up things very quickly. And really, he's already been a professional athlete. So, over in I almost said Australia because we have so many Australians floating around. In Ireland, the Gaelic football game over there is very big. And although they don't call it a professional league, it really is a professional league. Those guys approach it as a pro. They put a ton of time and effort into it. It's one of the most popular sports there in Ireland. And so he knows how to prepare. He knows how to focus. He knows what pressure looks like in a game when people are counting on you. So I'm excited for Charlie's future.
Charlie was somebody that really wowed a lot of people with that leg strength. And of course, you go out to an open practice in front of all the fans and you hit a 65-yarder. They got excited about him and his ability as well. How do you develop that consistency from maybe a shorter range?
So Charlie and all kickers and punters for that matter, they develop a process. Thinking about what makes me kick and punt well. So the specifics, finding a good spot, finding a good target line. And that's another thing about maturity, is picking a smart target line where I have the best opportunity to make this field goal. Even if I don't kick it well, I'm still going to make this field goal. Having a great tempo, that's something we worked on a lot when Charlie was out here in California, was his tempo. He had a tendency to be quick and attacking the ball, which was getting him out of rhythm. So we worked on his tempo. That's very important for kickers and punters for that matter. And just the experience of getting more reps, seeing more things, seeing more situations, and having an answer for those situations.
In talking to Blake Grupe after the initial 53 was announced, he cited how much more comfortable he was with the routine of things in the NFL. And it's not necessarily something that, he can talk to Charlie about it, but he really need to go through it and figure out what your routine is going to be. The benefit of the year and going through a kicking battle last year, and how much better do you think that Grupe can be this upcoming season?
I think he's going to have a real breakout season. Again, because he has the experience from last year. He knows what to expect. He's comfortable with the system there in New Orleans. Coach Rizzi and DA really like him and have a lot of confidence in him. So he just goes into the season, just feeling much more prepared and having, just like we talked about Charlie, having answers for situations that were new to him last year. And now he's experienced those and feels confident that he's got the right answer.
You got to talk about the punters now. And you mentioned it earlier, Australia, both of them from Australia have known each other for a long time. How difficult is it to go up against your buddy and be in a competition with them?
That's probably difficult. We compete all the time against friends, but when there's a lot riding on the line, an NFL job, that's there's a lot of gravity there. So, but those guys, like Matt said, they're good friends, good buddies. They probably, came across each other's paths way before New Orleans Saints. And so it appeared to me that they were both very supportive and helpful to each other during the course of the competition. And I know Matt, I was listening to his interview, he wishes Lou the best of luck. Lou will land on his feet. He'll probably be getting a workout here or picked up off waivers today or tomorrow. So he still has a bright future. He's got a ton of ability. I really enjoyed visiting with him during training camp. He's very knowledgeable about the punting game.
Matthew Hayball averaged 50.3 gross yards and 36.4 net on 7 punts during preseason. Headley was 47.7 gross, 35.4 net. So just slightly behind Hayball in those numbers. And Coach Allen said that he felt like maybe Hayball has a little bit more leg talent. What exactly does that mean?
Well, we're talking about a head coach here. Does a head coach really know about specialists? That's a little dig, DA. I love you, DA. Just kidding. Uh, but they're just different punters. They both bring different things to the table. You can't discount that Matt is a left footer. Okay, so a lot of teams love left-footed punters because there are more fumbled returns and fumbled punts from a left-footed punter. It's a different spin. It comes out of the sky differently. So New England always loved to have left-footed punters because statistically more fumbles. So that's a big benefit in Matt's case. When I was at camp, that day Matt was up and Lou was not punting, and Matt had a phenomenal day. It was a breezy day, and he turned over a lot of balls. He hit a lot of big punts, and I was very impressed with his consistency. Lou brings other things to the table. He has a large array of punts. We got to see a lot of them last year. They started the rollout punt, which again creates headaches for the return team. So Lou has lots of options. So I don't know if leg talent is maybe the right term, but I would definitely say they're different. They bring different toolboxes to their punting game, and they can both be very dangerous and both effective in their own way. But they're definitely different. They're different.
DA also mentioned age when talking about both of them, and Hayball is a little bit younger than Headley. How much does that come into play with kickers? And we hear it a lot about running backs, and we obviously have several players on our team, Demario Davis and Cam Jordan, who, even though they are older, don't seem like it really affects them that much. So with a kicker, is it variable depending on the type of player or person, their athletic ability?
Well, you're probably asking the wrong guy about age, because when I left the Saints, I probably had a cane when I was walking in and out of the locker room.
So it can be done.
It can be done. My experience and evaluations over years has been that the best years of a specialist are between the ages of 27 and 35. Why so late in 27? Because they're learning more process, more training, in season and out of season. They take care of their body better. They know and have experienced, again, more situations that they have answers for now. They increase their tools in their toolbox. And so their wisdom and experience grows and grows, not from age 22, but about 27. They really have a good handle on the NFL game. But they're still young and strong, and they still have the physical traits that make them great all the way up to about age 35. Then we start to see a little bit of physical decline, and then the player continues to grow in wisdom and experience. And so that's why you'll see some specialists in their mid to late 30s and maybe even into their 40s, because their wisdom just is so valuable, and they seem to have an answer for most situations that arise, and they're very dependable. And that's a big deal with coaches and management. Can we depend on our kicker and punter to get the job done when it's crunch time, and depend on this guy for the entire season? So Lou's certainly in that range of still at his best. And like I said, he's going to land on his feet, and we're going to see him again in the NFL.
Hayball undrafted, but he is 27. So he's starting that range right now, as you said, 27 to 35. Does anybody have an easier day than Zach Wood on cut day?
Zach probably slept well this week. He's a great snapper, and he's healthy, and he brings so much to the game. He's athletic. He played other positions throughout his career, so he brings a lot to the table. Consistency, maturity, experience, physicality, dependability. So I'm sure Riz really leans on Zach to be a leader in the locker room, to be a leader on the field. Many times the long snappers do become somewhat of a captain for the punt team, for the field goal team. So that the Saints are blessed to have someone like Zach. And, I see Zach playing, again, there's another guy, another position, age 27 to 35. And you can see some snappers go into their late 30s as well, as they keep themselves healthy. and continue to get the job done. And I see Zach playing for a long, long time.
With the new kickoff rule and what that looks like, does that change what you're looking for and what you need from a kicker?
Oh, yeah. We've been working on this all off season as soon as we heard about the rules. So my NFL and free agent players and punters, for that matter, who also kick off, you're going to see some real unique kickoffs now. Okay, so everybody was hiding their stuff during the preseason. Now that it's the real deal, Holyfield, you're going to see some really unique kickoffs. We call them dirty kickoffs that kickers have been working on this offseason and hiding them. But now they're going to come into use, that are going to be very difficult for the returner to handle. They're going to hit balls with awkward spins. They're going to hit these high, really hard and fast squib kicks that skip into the end zone. They're going to hit, we have guys who can hit a spiral off the kickoff tee so that it comes off the tee and now it's spiraling like a pass or a punt. That's really hard to gauge. So you're going to see some of that, and it's going to be exciting for the fans. And the NFL really wanted to bring this play back into something that's viewable. You know, this is not just a boring play where we get to see the kicker knock it into the end zone. So it's going to be a very exciting play. I'm sure the announcers are going to get tired of explaining the rule as they did during preseason. Like every game, we got to talk about what this rule means and the ins and outs. But everybody will finally pick up on it and understand the rules and not have to stop repeating that. But it's going to be really exciting. And some of the kickers really have some good stuff, some really good trick shots.
Anybody on the Saints here that is one of those kickers?
Well, I know we worked on a few with Charlie. I did not get to work with Blake on those kickoffs, but I guarantee you he's got some in his pocket that we're going to see this season.
It's funny because we talk about the offense a lot as far as not seeing exactly what we're going to see during the regular season. But for the specialists for that area to be hiding so much, it's different, but it is going to be a lot of fun to watch. How long do you think it's going to take for both sides to figure out exactly what they want to do with that kickoff?
We'll probably go 8 games before, because it's a wild, wild west. The coaches coaching the return team, like, what are we going to get? How are we going to make our return work? We want to get this ball out past the 30. It looks like a big scrum most of the time because the players are so close together at the start of the kickoff. So, but I know coaches like Rizzi and stuff, these guys, very creative, okay, very intelligent. They understand football and timing and space. So there'll be some coaches that figure it out, and then it's going to be a catch-up game. So I imagine special teams coaches are going to be watching a lot more film this year, because after week 1, Riz and Phil, they're going to probably watch every kickoff from around the league. What did the kickers do? Did anybody have a return that was really effective? And they'll keep building on that. So it's going to be exciting. It's a whole new frontier for kickoff return.
How much of an X factor is Rizzi in all of this, since he was a part of creating the rule, and he seems to just have such a grasp of love for this area of the game?
Huge X factor, because he and a number of other special teams coaches, were very, very involved in developing and bringing this rule, the rule change to the league, trying to save the kickoff and still making it an exciting play, and at some point an advantage for the kickoff team or kickoff return. So he certainly has been working overtime on, okay, here's the rule now that we've created. It's installed now. And so how can we, where's the seam here? Where can we benefit from this? So I would like to pick his brain, and he probably won't tell me either, unless I'm in the building wearing a Saints, hat, because it's top secret stuff until we see it on Sunday.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I appreciate all the insight, and I know that we will circle back with you at some point this season when something crazy happens and we need your expertise.
Okay. Well, thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Kicker Charlie Smith did in fact clear waivers, and the Saints were able to get him back on the practice squad, so he'll continue to develop there throughout the season. As John said, the area to watch, though, for all teams will be the kickoff, as we'll get our first real look at it this week. Really great stuff from all our guests today. We will get into more from the players and head coach Dennis Allen, as well as a Panthers perspective later in the week across our other podcast. Now that we are actually in it, yes, the podcast will be here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can tune in to the New Orleans Saints podcast right here on NewOrleansSaints.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.